next then?
Well, next was that when I moved to Kampala, and then I decided when I was in Kampala, obviously I was beginning to sort of, as a young woman, started feeling certain constraints of the Indian subculture in terms of gender issues, you know. My father actually was quite
what
open.
What sort of things do you mean?
Well, it was things like although my friends and I, we went to see films, etc., on our own, but there was always a feeling that you couldn't sort of transgress. You couldn't sort of marry whoever you sort of wanted to, or there was no pressure on me not to get educated. In fact, it was quite the reverse, because my family was very keen on me to get education and develop a professional profile. But just generally felt a constraining thing that women were not quite the same as men, sort of inequality. The subtle ways in which you learn as a child what to do and what not to do, you know, what would be approved of and what would not be approved of, you know. Although because I was fairly bright child, I didn't actually have too many constraints put upon me to kind of do the domestic work, so to speak. So in that sense, you know, I was quite had a fairly relaxed lifestyle in that sense, you know.
So where did, I mean, what followed from your feeling like that? You feel these constraints, and then
I felt that I wanted to kind of get away from those sorts of patriarchal dimensions of my social life, and I wanted to go and study somewhere else, away from home. I was away from my own home anyway, because I was in Kampala. But that actually, I experienced living with my relatives much more constraining than I did with my own parents, you know. And so I wanted to just get away from Uganda. The options for me were to, after A-levels, either to go to Makerere in Kampala, which was our university, or go to Kenya, which was also another part of the University of East Africa, or try to go somewhere else. So some of my friends we were mutually kind of influencing one another. Some of my close friends, we all felt that we wanted to really go and study abroad. And we started looking at the prospect of maybe getting scholarships. And this was in Kampala, and we went to a couple of embassies to gain information. So we went to British Embassy, and I remember going to the American Embassy to get some information. And then in the newspaper I came across this advertisement for a scholarship to go and study in the US. And it was called the ASPAO program, the African Studies program of American universities. They had this program of American universities. They took students from Africa and placed them in American universities. And I thought I would just have a go at it. And I applied and took my first intelligence test and all that. And I got called for an interview. And that's how I went to the US, to California, to study. Although I was not a social scientist at the time at all. Idealistically, I wanted to do something that I could come back and help my country, so to speak. So I actually went to do agriculture. So I went to the University of California, Davis, to do agriculture. And Basically, going to the U.S. was quite a life-changing experience. I'm a Jat caste, or I'm a Sikh, and
Could
so
you spell that?
Jat. In the Punjab, it's a dominant caste. Although, of course, the Brahmins, amongst the Hindus, the Brahmins are at the top. But the Sikhs sort of have a separate history. And so Jat Sikhs are, because they are a landowning group, sort of not very large landowning in the kind of sense we talk about landowners here, but very much sort of independent landowning group, proprietary group, and so that was also an issue of how you relate to groups differently. In Uganda, there were also Muslims and Hindus and Sikhs, so it was quite a cosmopolitan culture within the Asian context. But there were constraints, I mean, you could be friends. I had lots of Muslim friends and Hindu friends and Sikhs friends, but you couldn't marry outside outside your social group. And so in that sense, it was a life-changing experience to go away from home so far, where I was completely on my own.